So I want to welcome you all. I'm Ellen Hanak. I'm the director of the Water Policy Center at the Public Policy Institute of California. The center was launched back in April 2015, and we work to connect nonpartisan, objective research to real-world policy discussions and debates with the goal of really helping to push the envelope toward innovative solutions that are good for California's economy, society, and environment. And it's a lot of fun because we get to meet and have convenings like this with folks like you and around the state and really talk with a lot of folks about pushing solutions that are good for our state. So warm welcome to all of you here in the room and to those of you who are viewing by webcast. And thanks for joining, and happy Water New Year, happy belated Water New Year. Those of you who are the true water wonks know that October 1st is the beginning of our water year. That's the beginning of when we hope we're going to get rain, but not too much rain and snow. So we have no idea yet. It's last year there were predictions for a Godzilla, El Nino, and what we discovered was that just the way the climate is changing and warming temperatures made it what was already difficult to predict even harder to predict. So we got some rain, but not enough to put us out of this historic drought. So we're now coming out of 5 years of drought with big question marks of where we're going forward. But what we do know is that California has a very variable climate, and so normal is variability for us, and so we thought, just as a kind of way of starting off this water year, that it'd be a good time to take stock of where we are 5 years into this drought and how we're doing in some key sectors and where the policy priorities are, both in this coming year and beyond. So just, a little bit of overview of the program and sort of how we've been thinking of it at PPIC together with our research colleagues from around the state. This has been an exceptional drought in a couple of ways. One is some historically low flows, and that's, within the 5 years, there were 4 years with some of the lowest flows on record. But also what's been exceptional about it is that it's been very hot. It's been just off the charts hot, and this has been true not just in California, but across much of the West. And the combination of dry and hot makes management a lot more challenging. For one, it shrinks our free storage in the Sierra snowpack. So in 2015, we had the precipitation was about 17% of average, but the snowpack was 5% of average. And this past year, as people have been doing the wrap-up in 2016, where precip was probably, just a little bit below average statewide, we had what people are now calling a snow drought because it was so warm, so a lot less snow. Now that means just we have to figure out how we're going to manage storage for the summer if we're not getting it in the snowpack. What the heat also does is it dries up the soils, so it makes plants thirstier, which basically increases irrigation demands just at the time when you don't have as much water. And then it also raises water temperatures, and that makes environmental management a lot more complicated, which is already a hard thing in California. And when you also are having much bigger challenges managing cold water for salmon and steelhead below dams, it creates a lot of challenges, which we've gone through over the last few years. So we don't know what this year is going to bring us or the following, but we do know that we have to be prepared for variability and extreme events. And extreme events like this drought they bring a lot of challenges, but they also do bring opportunities to figure out, to take stock on how we're doing. And so that's been really a big part of the focus of the work that we at the Water Policy Center, together with our network of research colleagues, have been focusing on, kind of looking at what can we learn and what can we harvest from this experience for getting better going forward. And that's really kind of how we thought about developing the program for today. So we're going to be looking at 4 sectors. And I'll just run through them quickly for you, and then you're going to have a chance to hear from some really great experts talking about how we're doing and challenges and priorities going forward. So the first is In some ways, it's been a lot in the news, but in some ways, it's the easiest, even though it's still challenging. Don't want to minimize the challenges for my panel coming up next. But cities and suburbs, this is where over 90% of the population of California lives. It's where the vast majority of economic activity is. And cities and suburbs have been a lot in the news because there was a 25% mandatory conservation target set back in April 2015 for these communities. But it's also the case that they've been doing pretty well, that people responded to that call, but also the urban and suburban agencies had done a lot of planning. So we haven't seen a lot of cases of big agencies being in a situation of running out of water. And in fact, the economy has been doing pretty well all through this drought. But there are a lot of questions going forward with how to get better, how to build drought resilience, given that the population is going to be continuing to grow, and that we don't know. I mean, maybe, this was a record drought so far, but we may be seeing longer and worse droughts in the future. So being prepared for that will be the first panel. The second panel is going to focus on California agriculture. And so, many of you know California is a global powerhouse in agriculture. We're the largest ag state in the nation, major producer of the nation's fruits and vegetables, dairy as well, also a major player on the global scene. And California is that way because we have a great place to grow stuff if you can add water. So that was not intentional. That's actually tea, but yeah, it's got water in it too. So you got to be able to have water in order to grow stuff in California, and farms were hit very hard by the drought in terms of their surface water availability. On average, across California agriculture, groundwater provides about 1/3 of irrigation supplies. During this drought, in some parts, say in the San Joaquin Valley in particular, probably provided over 70%. Because as farmers had their surface supplies cut, they switched to groundwater to the extent that they could. And that meant that they didn't have to fallow nearly as much as they would have if they hadn't had access to that. But the phenomenal amount of pumping that's been going on since this drought got going has also really underscored some of the more long-standing concerns about groundwater management in the state. And in some parts, in particular in the San Joaquin Valley, you've seen well levels go down very far. You've seen land sinking at unprecedented rates, and you've seen a lot of wells going dry. And the combination of those kinds of effects and the fact that folks within those communities have really started to exhibit a lot of concern about that lent support to the passage in September 2014 of a historic groundwater law. California became the last, but not the least, of states in the West to set statewide mandates for the management of groundwater, and did it in a very unique California way, which is to basically put the responsibility on local water users to put in place management plans to manage their groundwater sustainably. Folks have been hard at work at that ever since that law was passed a couple of years ago, and so the second panel is going to give us a chance to hear from folks that have their sleeves rolled up about how this is going and what we should be thinking about going forward with respect to implementation of that law. The third area is, and the third panel is going to look at aquatic ecosystems. Now, ecosystems, riverine ecosystems and wetlands were hit very hard by this drought. They don't have groundwater that they can just pump to make up for a deficit in flows. And what we reported a year ago, in August 2015, we did a sort of status check, and the biologists on our team anticipated that identified 18 fish species at near-term risk of extinction. And that includes most salmon runs, that includes steelhead, that includes delta smelt that has been on the list for a while. And what I can say is that since then, the numbers are looking even worse for some of these species. So this is a real crisis brewing, and the third panel is going to look at that and really kind of look at the difficult scientific, legal, and policy challenges that relate to dealing with this kind of emergency and our fragile aquatic ecosystems. And then fourth, also one of the areas that has been a real challenge in this drought has been safe drinking water in disadvantaged rural communities. This is the place where we've been hearing about wells going dry, domestic wells, shallow domestic wells going dry, but also some small water systems that are groundwater dependent have been in trouble. very much linked, in this case, to the drought and to the falling water tables. But what it also gave an opportunity to highlight was that in a lot of these communities, there have been problems about drinking water access before the drought hit, with contamination by nitrate from agriculture, but also by arsenic and some other contaminants in these wells and these well-based systems. And so there's been a lot of focus on this at the policy level, a number of bills passed, money made available. Certainly the job is not done. The fourth panel is going to give us a status check on that to see how we're doing and what more needs to be done in that area. So you've got a lot of great things to look forward to, great discussions to look forward to. Before I move over to the first panel, I just want to give you a couple more things. One is a thank you to our sponsors. The event today is made possible by support from the S.D. Bechtel Jr. Foundation, which has also been a major funder of the Water Policy Center, provided us with seed funding to get going. And we've also been really fortunate to get support from a number of other foundations and organizations for our work since launching. And in particular, I want to give a shout out to the 24 sponsors of the California's Water Briefing Kit, which you have at your seats, and those of you following by web can find online. This is a kit of 12 sort of handy, short, catch up quickly on a bunch of different key water policy topics, and it features members of our research network from California and beyond. Over 50 researchers and experts contributed to these, and the sponsoring organizations span all of California in terms of geography. They span the agricultural, environmental, and urban sectors, and we just really appreciate that support, so thank you. So now, logistics. We're going to move into these sessions. We decided not to schedule breaks, instead to kind of let that be a self-serve system. When you need to get up and stretch your legs, there's coffee and tea outside, and the restrooms are over in that corner upstairs. So just feel free to sneak in and out if you need to. What we will have is, when the last panel finishes, an informal lunch where so the program itself is over, and it just gives people a chance to hang out, grab some soup and sandwiches. We're anticipating a cold, wet winter here with the soup, thinking that's going to conjure it up, and just hang out and enjoy each other's company. And then what else do I need to tell you? Yes, later today you're going to get an email asking you a few survey questions to evaluate the event. It's really helpful to us if you give us your candid feedback, so please take a few minutes to do that. And with that, I'm going to call up the first panel that I'm going to be moderating on urban drought resilience. Come on up, folks.